morning. So just we shall start. Whether we can start?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, you may.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Firstly, I want to refresh your memory regarding the previous lecture, yesterday lecture. I think that I have opened the discussion on the School of Hindu Law. In the School of Hindu Law, I have pointed out that two schools are here. One Mitakshara, another is Dhaibag. Yesterday, I have pointed out that who establishes this is Mitakshara, or better to say that on whose philosophy Mitakshara school has been established. Actually, Vigyaneshwar, he wrote a commentary on Yagnavalkya Smriti, and the commentary was known as Mitakshara. So that's why the followers who follow the Mitakshara principle, they created a school. This school is being called as Mitakshara school. The second one I have pointed out yesterday, this is the Dhaibag. Actually, Dhaibag school is being established by the Jamut Vahan. He wrote the commentary on the different smritis and draw a principle, and that principle was followed by a community, and that community was being called as Yagnval. Sorry, that is being called Dhaibag. So now two schools are, one is Mitakshara, another is Dhaibag. I have already pointed out that Mitakshara school, it is accepted throughout the country except the West Bengal and Assam. And Assam and West Bengal, actually principle of Dhaibag has been accepted. Yesterday I have also pointed out that Dhaibag, it is dealing only on the two subjects. One is partition, another is inheritance. So West Bengal and Assam, the principle of Dhaibag will apply, and it will apply only in relation to the subjects of partition and inheritance. If any other subject will come, naturally Dhaibag is not able to deal, then principle of Mitakshara will apply. I think that up to that we have discussed yesterday. Now, today I want to point out that what is the difference between the Dhaibag and Mitakshara. Why these are the two schools? I have already pointed out these two schools, they have different principles. That's why these two schools are different. Now Mitakshara and Dhaibag, here some literature I want to refer right now, but I am postponing it because when I will discuss the sub-school, particularly the Mitakshara sub-school, I have pointed out in sub-school that there are four sub-schools in Mitakshara. One is Banaras, that is Mithila, third one Bombay, and the fourth one that is Madras or the Dravid school. So we shall discuss it later on. Right now, since I am opening the discussion, particularly on the Mitakshara and Dhaibag, therefore, it is very important to know what is the difference between the Mitakshara and Dhaibag. The first difference on Mitakshara and Dhaibag has been on the point of inheritance. Here actually the principle of inheritance in Mitakshara, it is different, and the principle on which inheritance deal under Dhaibag is different. How it is different? Mitakshara actually, the principle of the Mitakshara is that it will based on the theory of propinquity. Try to catch my words. Propinquity, Proprinquity. Propinquity means this is the blood particles. So here the basis of the inheritance, particularly in Mitakshara, is principle of propinquity. What is the meaning of propinquity? Blood of the same particle. Blood of the same particle means the person who are carrying the blood of the same particles, they are authorized to succeed the property. The person who is closer in blood relation, he will succeed the property first, and those who are remoter in blood relation, they will succeed later on. So here the principle of inheritance succession, particularly in Mitakshara, is propinquity, and meaning of the propinquity is that blood of the same particle. The persons who are carrying the blood of the same particle, they are inheriting the property of any deceased person first. Those having not the same blood particles, they will succeed the property when the same blood is not available. So here whole theme is based on, particularly in Mitakshara, blood relation. The persons who are having the same blood relation, they succeed the property first, and those who are remoter, they will succeed later on. The principle of inheritance, particularly in Dayabhag. In Dayabhag, the principle of inheritance is religious efficacy. I am repeating again the word. The word is religious efficacy. What do you mean by religious efficacy? Religious efficacy means the benefit of religion. Here, the meaning is very clear. Religious efficacy means the person who is providing the benefit to a person who is deceased. In a very near way, he will succeed the property first, and those who will provide the religious benefit to deceased in remote way, he will succeed the property later on. So this is the basic difference between Mitakshara and Dayabhag. That is the principle of inheritance. In Mitakshara, the principle of inheritance based on the blood of the same particle, this is technically called as propinquity. Whereas in Dayabhag, the principle is based on the religious efficacy. Religious efficacy means the person who is providing the religious benefit, he will succeed the property first. Now, a confusion may come in your mind that what is the meaning of religious efficacy? Because blood of the same particle, you can understand well. The person who is carrying the same blood particles, having the same blood, he will succeed the first. So, son carrying the same blood, he will succeed the first. This is very important here. But Mitakshara, one point is very also important, that the females were being excluded from inheritance. Daughter is carrying the same blood particles which the son is carrying, but under Mitakshara principle, the daughter was being excluded from the inheritance. Now I am coming on the second point, and the second is that is Dayabhag. I have pointed out that Dayabhag inheritance is based on the religious efficacy. Actually, there is one period in all Hindu religion, and that period is every Hindu just give the religious benefit to his ancestor. How? By way of Pindadan. I think all of you are knowing well what is the meaning of Pindadan. This is the occasion, Pitr Paksh chal raha hai. Pindadan actually being done by the Hindu to their ancestors? Actually, here one ball. Ball means this ball is being consisted of barley, and sometime in south it is consisting of rice. चावल या जौ से बना हुआ ये बाल होता है और इसे जो है ऑफर किया जाता है गया में जाकर और वहां से पिंड का लाभ उसके जो एंसेस्टर्स को मिलता है। जो पिंड दान करते हैं उसका लाभ माता की लाइन में 2, पिता की लाइन में 3 और पिंड के आधा लाभ जो है पिता की लाइन में 6 तक और माता की लाइन में 4 तक जाता है। Just I want to explain what is the meaning of this. If any person offering the pind, then naturally on mother's side, it will go the benefit of full ball up to the 2 stage of ancestor. 2 stage means to the mother and mother's father. If any person is offering the ball, pind, then the benefit of the full will go to the side of mother up to the 2. 2 means mother and mother's father, no. And up to the, and towards the father's line, it will reach up to the 5 lines. 5 lines means father, grandfather, great grandfather, great and great grandfather. So up to that it will reach. Actually, when Daaya Bhag principle was being propounded, the concept was different. What was the concept? Concept was that early on father's line, this benefit will go half to the 2 ancestors, mother's line up to 2 ancestors and father's line up to the 3 ancestors, and half ball benefit will reach from father's line up to the 6 and on mother's line up to the 4. So this was the concept. Later on this concept is being reduced and the same concept we have of the Sapind relation, which I will discuss later on when we will discuss the marriage chapter. In marriage chapter, Sapind will again come, and in the Sapind, I will again discuss. But right now, you should have in your mind that what is the meaning of the religious benefit. Religious benefit means a person is providing the benefit to his sister, and this benefit is a religious benefit. It is being provided by Hindu, every Hindu, at a special time, Shraddha period, and actually this is the period Pitrupaksh. This is the right time to offer the pind benefit, and this pind benefit will go to ancestors not only from the father line but also to the mother's line. So now the first distinction I have pointed out, and this distinction I have made on the basis of inheritance. Inheritance means if a person dies, who will succeed the property? According to Mitakshara, if any person is being dead, who will succeed the property? The person who is nearer in blood, he will succeed the property first. And the person who is remoter, he will succeed the property later. In Daaya Bhag, here inheritance here means it is based on the religious benefit. Religious benefit means the person who is giving the religious benefit to ancestor in a very near way, he will succeed the first. So this is the first distinction in between the Mitakshara and Daaya Bhag. Actually, I am unable to share the board because when I will draw a sketch, then it will be very easy to understand for you. But it is not possible through online. Therefore, I think that I am able to explain. If any person is not getting, please tell me. Now, the second distinction. This was the first distinction. First distinction between Mitakshara and Daaya Bhag. This is inheritance. In Daya Bhag, inheritance is based on the religious benefit. In Mitakshara, it is based on propinquity. It is known as blood of the same particle. Now the second distinction between the Daya Bhag and Mitakshara. In Mitakshara, actually right by birth is being recognized. Right by birth means, here actually in Mitakshara, this is the proposition that son, grandson, great-grandson, when they are born in the family, they will get their share only by birth. If a person is single, after the marriage any son is being born, in Mitakshara this is the concept that the moment the son takes birth, he will share the property of the father and he will share equally with the father party. So this is being actually called as right by birth. Now the second thing, in regards to which property, this share of the son only be in relation to ancestral property, it will not be in relation to self-acquired property. So now in Mitakshara, we can very well say that the son only by birth, he will get the property. In the ancestral property of the father, he will get equal share with the father, but only in relation to father's ancestral property, not in relation to self-acquired property. Ancestral property means the property which the father succeed from his own father, grandfather, great-grandfather. So only in relation to that property, the son will get this share. But in relation to self-acquired, if the father earns by his own means any property, then the son will not succeed any share in that property. So this is the distinction in Mitakshara, that Mitakshara recognizes the principle of right by birth. Whereas Daya Bhag does not recognize right by birth. What does it mean? It means that here son, grandson, great-grandson, they will not succeed any share in the property of the father, whatever the property may be, either ancestral or the self-acquired. After the death of the father, the son will only be authorized, only be legalized to take the share. So that's why here, under Daya Bhag, the son has no right by birth. He cannot get the share from the property of the father only by birth. And it is very important here to mention that here son and daughter both are taking the property in equal share after the death of the father. So during the lifetime of the father, neither the son will take any share nor the daughter will take any share from the property of the father. But after death of the father, son and daughter both are taking the property in equal share. So that's why this is paramount distinction. Right by birth is recognized under the Mitakshara, whereas right by birth is not recognized in Daya Bhag. So this is a very important notion. So first distinction was on the count of inheritance. The second distinction was on the count of right by birth. Now the third distinction is also related with right by birth. What is that distinction? It is called as community of ownership and unity of possession. What is the meaning of community of ownership and unity of possession? In Mitakshara, actually, community of ownership and unity of possession is being adopted. Community of ownership means, suppose, because particularly where we are residing, except in West Bengal, here Mitakshara principle is being accepted. So suppose there is one joint family or co-parsonary consisting of the son and the father, then community of interest means what? The property belongs not to one person, but the property belongs to each and every person who is is shareholder. So this is being called as community of interest. Here the property belongs not to the father or son alone. The property belongs to all the persons who are members in coparcenary. So this is very important thing that here in Mitakshara, actually this community of ownership is being actually accepted. It means the ownership not lies only one person, but the ownership lies to community at large. Community means to the father and the son all. So here suppose a person has 3 sons, so now here the share will be 1/4. And this 1/4 share each will get. When he will get? After the partition. Before the partition, there is no any share which is fixed. All property belongs to all 4 persons. This is being called as community of interest. So this is the principle which is accepted in Mitakshara. Unity of possession means, suppose any member of the coparcenary, if he is possessing the property, then it shall presume that property has been possessed not by only that person but all the person. All the person means, suppose you are a student here. Right now you are not possessing the property which lies in your village. Whether you can say that you are not possessing the property, Mitakshara pointing out that your property has been possessed by your brother, your elder brother, your uncle, your father. So this is being called as unity of possession. So Mitakshara recognizes both community of ownership and unity of possession. Community of ownership means ownership not in one person of the property. Unity of possession means if any person possessing the property, that property he is possessing not by his own, but on behalf of all the members of the coparcenary or the joint family. So this is actually the principle which is being actually accepted in Mitakshara. Daya Bhag does not recognize unity of possession and community of ownership. Why? Because so long as the father is alive, son cannot get any share in the property. After the death of the father, the son will succeed the property and they will succeed the property according to their share. So that is very important here. The son will succeed or daughter will succeed the property in Daya Bhag, not before the or during the lifetime of the father, but after the death of the father. And when the father dies, the share automatically, the partition will automatically take place and each son and daughter will get equal share. So now here, there is no community of ownership, there is no unity of possession, but in Mitakshara, the community of ownership and unity of possession is recognized. The third one also related with this right by birth. What is that? Transfer, power of transfer to power of other or son to transfer his share. Mitakshara does not recognize it. In the old principle of Mitakshara, no person, neither the father is authorized to transfer his share, nor the son is authorized to share. What is required? Requirement is firstly the partition will take place, share shall be divided among all the coparceners, then coparcener is authorized, father and son is authorized to transfer it. So this is the basic difference between the Mitakshara and the Daya Bhag. Here, under Mitakshara, transfer cannot be made by any one coparcener. Transfer can only be made after the partition when the shares are being determined. Now under Daya Bhag, since during lifetime of the father, the son and daughter, they cannot succeed any property. After the death, they can succeed the property. Therefore, here there is no question of community of ownership, because each and every person getting their own share. and they are authorized to transfer their share to any person. So this is the basic difference between Mitakshara and Daibhag. I again summarized the point I have discussed before you regarding the difference between the Mitakshara and Daibhag. The first difference on the basis of inheritance. Inheritance means if any Hindu dies, who will succeed the property? Here the basis of inheritance, particularly in Mitakshara, is propannuity. This is the blood relation. And in Daibhag, it is actually based on religious efficacy. This is religious benefit. The second distinction I have pointed out, right by birth. In Mitakshara, right by birth has been recognized. What does it mean? It means that son by birth, he will take the share in the property of ancestral property father. But in Daibhag, this principle has not been recognized. The third distinction, that is a distinction, community of ownership and unity of possession. Since Mitakshara recognizes right by birth, therefore here if one person having the ownership over the property, then this ownership shall be treated as ownership of all the persons. This is not the ownership of a single person. He has keeping his ownership not by his own but on behalf of whole family. But in Daibhag, actually, this principle will not apply. Why? The reason is very obvious, because every person holding their own share, therefore there is no question of community of ownership. Similarly, also unity of possession, it has also not been accepted in the Daibhag, but it is accepted in the Mitakshara. If any member possessing the property, that property belongs not only to him, but that property belongs to all members. This is called as unity of possession. Okay? Any person having any doubt? May I proceed further? Hello? Hello?
Sir, what is the fourth point further?
Pardon?
So what is the fourth point?
Pardon, I am not getting your voice. Repeat again.
Sir, what is the fourth point, sir?
Fourth point in regard to this is transfer of the property. Transfer means who can transfer the property? Whether father can transfer the property or can transfer the property. Here under Mitakshara, the principle is very clear. In Mitakshara, actually, no one can transfer the property. When the family is joint, no person is authorized to transfer the property. Why? Because every person has a community of ownership. Ownership does not belong to one person. Since ownership does not belong to one person, therefore one person is not authorized under Mitakshara law to transfer the property. Father cannot transfer, son cannot transfer. When they can transfer, firstly it is required that partition should take place. And after the partition, when the share will be determined, then only they are authorized to transfer. But in Daibhag, since there is no community of ownership, therefore the son, they are actually succeeding the property. Therefore, they are all authorized to transfer their own share. So this is the fourth distinction between the Mitakshara and the Daibhag. May I proceed further? Any doubt?
Yes, sir.
Tell me whether I can proceed or repeat.
You can proceed, sir.
Okay. Now, another point which I want to put before you. Tell me. Hello. Another point which I want to put before you, that in Mitakshara I have pointed out there are 4 sub-schools. One is Banaras, another is Mithila, third one that is Bombay, Fourth one, that is Dravid. I have pointed out how the schools are being established. I have pointed out that Mitakshara was based on the principle of Vigyaneshwar, and Dayabhag is based on the principle of Jamutvahan. So similarly also, whether the sub-school is also based on the thoughts of any person, single person, answer is no. Here sub-schoolings, particularly in Mitakshara, has been made not on the thoughts of the one person, one jurist, but actually there are several jurists, there are so many jurists, and their ideas, their thoughts are responsible for division of the sub-school. One by one I am taking. So you take the Banaras. Whether the Banaras school is being influenced by one thoughts, answer is no. Here Banaras sub-school is being actually established on the thoughts of more than one jurist. The name is, one jurist is Mitra Mishra. He wrote one commentary. The commentary is known as Veer Mitrodaya. So Banaras is influenced by the thoughts of Mitra Mishra. And the second person also influencing, the name of that person is Kamlakar Bhatt. The book which he has written, that book is being called as Nirday Sindhu. So now here actually in Banaras, this school is not influenced and established by thoughts of the one jurist, a Hindu jurist, but it is being actually established on thoughts of more than one jurist. One jurist I have pointed out, here there are two jurists, mainly their thoughts are influencing, and Banaras sub-schools was being established. One is Mitra Mishra, another is the Kamlakar Bhatt. Mitra Mishra, the book of the Mitra Mishra is known as Veer Mitrodaya, and the writing of Kamlakar Bhatt is known as Nirday Sindhu. So these are the two literatures which were responsible for establishment of the Banaras school. Similarly, also in Mithila, we shall discuss and explore the same thing when I will discuss the sources of Hindu law. But right now, I am just introducing, this is very important thing that you should have in mind, that here sub-schoolings are not being based on the thoughts of one jurist. Keep it, and we shall again explore when we shall discuss the sources of Hindu law. Then I will explore, there are so many other persons also, there are so many other literature also, they are influencing the Banaras school. But right now, you remember that here the two jurists are responsible, one is Mitra Mishra and another is Kamlakar Bhatt. The second, that is Mithila. Mithila is actually Vivad Chintamani. This is the literature, and Vivad Ratnakar. These are the two literatures which were responsible for establishing the Mithila sub-school. Vivad Chintamani, it was being written by Vachaspati. Vivad Ratnakar was being written by Vishweshwar. So actually these two jurists, they were actually responsible for establishment of the Mithila school. Vivad Chintamani, Vivad Ratnakar. Apart from that, there are other literature also, Madan Parijat. It is equally important. But right now you should retain that Mithila sub-school is being established on the thoughts of two literatures. One is Vivad Chintamani, another is Vivad Ratnakar. Now the third is Bombay. Bombay school actually being influenced by Nilkant Bhatt. Nilkant Bhatt, he was actually responsible, and the literature is Neelkant Bhatt literature is Vyavhar Mayuk. So Neelkant Bhatt, he wrote a literature and the name of the literature is Vyavhar Mayuk. Apart from that, two more literatures are also here under the Bombay school. One is Veer Mitrodaya. I have already pointed out Banarasi school was influenced by Veer Mitrodaya. Similarly, Veer Mitrodaya also influenced the Bombay school. Another is Kamalakar Bhatt Nirday Sindhu. It is also responsible for creation of the Banarasi school. So Banarasi school, sub-school is being actually influenced not by the thought of the one jurist, but by the thought of the three jurists. One is Neelkant Bhatt, another is Mitra Misra, and the third one that is Kamalakar Bhatt. Now Dravidi school is also actually been established and influenced by certain literatures. What are these literatures? Smrit Chandrika, it is written by Devanna Bhatt. Parasar Madhavi, it was written by Madhavacharya. Saraswati Vilas, it was written by Pratap Rudradev. And Vyavhar Nirday, it was written by Baradaraj. So this Madrasi school, sub-school, it is being influenced by the thoughts of more than one jurist. Four jurists, they were influencing for establishment of this Dravid or Madrasi school. So they were actually responsible for establishment of this Madrasi school. I may repeat again, Smrit Chandrika, Parasar Madhavi, Saraswati Vilas, Vyavhar Nirday. So these are the four literatures which are responsible for creation of this sub-school. So I think that our discussion particularly is complete in relation to school and sub-school of the Hindu law. Any person having any doubt, then you can raise. Otherwise, I want to take up another chapter today. I want to introduce that chapter before you. And then any person having any doubt regarding the school and sub-school of the Hindu law? May I proceed?
Sir, in Dravida school, Pratap Rudradev has written which commentary, sir?
Particularly, this Pratap Rudradev, his writing is so he wrote the commentary, and this was accepted in the South Madras. This was influenced there. Any more? Dravidi school, actually chatting is also coming out from the sideline. Here, Dravidi school, it is influenced by not thoughts of not only one person, but the thoughts of more jurists. Right now, I am narrating the four persons only. But later on, when I will discuss the sources of Hindu law, then I will give a clear list where you can get that there are so many other persons also, but their names are not so prominent as the name which I am referring right now. So I am referring only persons that they are responsible for creation of that school, their thoughts are being influenced. So this is not actually all the jurist name I am putting before you. I am just summarizing because this is one of very important questions which are being asked in the examinations. What question? That whether sub-school and sub-school, whether school and sub-school of Hindu law, whether they are being established or influenced by the jurist of one person. Answer will be no. School and sub-school under the Hindu law, they are being influenced not by the thought of the one Hindu jurist, but by the thought of many other jurists. Here some person taking that Vivad Ratnakar. It is actually literature Vivad Ratnakar. It is actually literature which is being popular in Mithila. And this literature is very important. Vivad Chintamani, Vivad Ratnakar, both are very important. So now I am able to proceed towards the another chapter, and this chapter is sources of the Hindu law. Under sources of the Hindu law, I want to discuss what are the sources of the Hindu law. Sources means what? When I am saying that sources means what? Suppose I want to discuss before you sources of the water. You can get what are the sources of the water? जहां जहां से पानी पाया जाता है. Each thing is the sources. So here water you can get from the sea, water from the river, water you can get from well, water you can get from other sources. So these are the sources where you can get the water. So here sources of Hindu law means what? Sources of Hindu law means here from where we are getting the Hindu law. So here sources of Hindu law, before discussing this chapter, I just introduced before you. I have pointed out yesterday that when the Aryan came in India, particularly they settled down in the fertile land of the Doaba. Doaba means this is the region, which is the region in between the Ganga and Yamuna. This region was very fertile, was available there. Therefore, here actually the Aryans, they were settled down. Because life can only be where the water is available. Life can only be where the land is fertile. Since both are available in the land or in the Doaba area, therefore they firstly settled down there. Now when the population increased day by day, naturally the people, they are spreading from Doaba area to the other parts of the India. When they are spreading, naturally they are spreading from the other part of the India. Climatic conditions, geographical conditions were not the same, and their lifestyle was also not been same. Why I am telling? Because actually when there is a life, this is the principle that life cannot be constant. Life always be changing. When the Aryan came, the society was agro-postal society. Later on development will take place, and when the development will take place, naturally the peoples, they searched out there are other means for the life. And other means, when they searched, their living style was also being changed. Their living style was also being changed. Some question is coming that what is meaning of Doaba? Doab, this is being called as the area. No, this is not I have not Doab. D-O-A-B, Doab. Doab means Doab, this is the area. Yes, this one. Doab is the area which is in between the Ganga and Yamuna river. This land was very fertile, because you are all knowing well that whether the river is flowing, this is a very important component, that river when they are flowing, they are changing the soil of that area. Sometimes they are cutting the soil, sometimes they are depositing the soil. And moreover, that was very important. What was that? Where the water was available. So when the Aryan came first, they settled down only Doab area. because that area was full of fertile land, that area was full of water, life was very easy. But I have pointed out when the population increase, naturally migration will take place. Aryans, they migrated from that area to the other part of the country, and when they migrated, they also searched other way of earning. Other way of earning they also searched, and life was not constant. Life was being gradually changed. When the life was being changed naturally, the law is bound to change, because the law always follows the life. When lifestyle is changed, now we are using the computer, there is a requirement of cyber law. 10 years back, there was no requirement of cyber law. So when the life is being changed, naturally, there is a requirement of more laws. This was also happened. And when the population is scattered throughout the India, lifestyle changed. And when the lifestyle changed, then there was a requirement of more and more laws to deal with the people. How this was possible? It was only possible when we have more and more laws. When the Aryans settled down, we have only, in the name of law, we have only Vedas. 4 Vedas are being there. One is called as Rig Ved, another is called as Samved, Atharved, and Rig Ved, Samved, Yajurved, Atharved. These are the 4 Vedas, they are being here. So actually, these Vedas, they were actually composed when the Aryans were being settled down. But when the increase, these Vedas, they were not able to deal the problem of the other person. What was required? Requirement was that more laws also being made. How these laws were being made? Because legislature was not at that time. So therefore here, number of literatures, they were being increased. So that's why here, after the Veds, another literature come in this line that is called as Smritis. Similarly, also when the Smritis, they were not able to solve the problem, then another literature also came in this line, and this is called as commentaries and digest. Then if they are also not able to solve the problem, then the custom will also come. So that's why we have a sources of Hindu law. This is called as the ancient sources of Hindu law. We have 4 ancient sources of Hindu law. One is called as Vedas. Here 4 Vedas are here. The second one that is called as Smritis. Here 2 kind of Smritis we have. One is early, another is the later Smriti. Early Smriti is being called as Dharma Sutras. Later Smriti is being called as Dharma Shastra. So Smriti, they came. If a problem was not being solved by the Smriti, then naturally the commentaries are being written on these Smritis. Commentaries, these are the commentaries which are written on Smritis. Here I have pointed out that 2 kinds of Smritis are being composed of. One is called as Dharma Sutra, another is called as Dharma Shastra. Later on, commentaries were being written on this Dharma Sutra and Dharma Shastra. Upanishad is also the source of Hindu law, but writing of the Upanishad actually, I will tell later on when I will take up Smritis, then I will also refer the Upanishads. So right now you can very well have this thing in your mind that we have 2 kind of sources under Hindu law. One is called as ancient sources of Hindu law, another is called as modern sources of Hindu law. Ancient means the sources which are being old one. Old one means here, old one here means that Vedas, this is the first It is very oldest. Then Smriti, I have pointed out two kind of Smriti. One is Dharma Sutra, another is Dharma Shastra. The commentaries and digest. Commentary means the comments are being written on Smritis. Digest means essay. Digest means what? Digest means essay. What is the meaning of essay? Essay means if on one subject, if I am compiling the thoughts of all jurists, this is called as digest. This is called as essay. So this essay is being actually written. This is also a source of Hindu law. And the fourth one, that is the custom, it is also the source of Hindu law. Kiran Sonkar, I am getting disturbed by your voice. If you have some question, you can put. Hello. So this is the sources of Hindu law. Under Hindu sources of Hindu law, we have two kind of sources. One is called as ancient source. Second one is called as modern source. In ancient source, we have four kind of the sources. I am repeating again. One is called as Vedas. Another is called as Smritis. The third one is called as commentaries and digest. And the fourth one is called as the custom. Modern sources, there are three kinds of the modern sources of the Hindu law. One is called as equity, justice and good conscience. Second one is called as precedent. And the third one is called as legislation. Equity, justice and good conscience means what? Equity, justice and good conscience means if there is any problem which cannot be solved by the ancient sources, then you shall apply your good conscience. What your Sanchetana, what your Atma is telling, you should solve the problem according to that. So this is called as equity, justice and good conscience. Equity means equality. It means that if any problem comes and it cannot be solved by the ancient sources, then the principle of equality shall apply. Justice means what is the demand of the justice. If the problem cannot be solved by ancient sources, then according to justice, the solution may be searched out. Equity, justice, good conscience means according to their own conscience, the problem should be solved. आपकी आत्मा क्या कहती है उसके अनुसार समस्या आप सॉल्व करें. The second modern source is precedent. Precedent means earlier decisions. You are all knowing well earlier decision of the courts, they are very relevant, not only in this subject, but in all these subjects. Okay, I am getting some message that some other class also been engaged, going to engage. So that's why I am just switching over. Please disconnect yourself. I will engage the class tomorrow on the same time.